Are you winning, son?
No. No, I'm not winning, bro. This game, so many bugs, frame rate dips and drops, the janky combat. It wasn't ready for launch. It wasn't ready for launch.
Dang, that's rough, buddy. Couldn't be me, though. I'm not the one doing the reviews anymore. I'm off to go play Halo. Have a good one.
Wait, please take me with... So the MCU, easily the world's biggest pop icon at the moment, with movies like Endgame being the #1 grossing film of all time, and a series of Marvel movies spanning an entire decade worth of content. During this hype wave around Phase 3, Square Enix decided to drop this cute little teaser showing off a brand new open world or open-ended Avengers game, the likes of which we haven't really seen before, and the Avengers didn't even meet up in a game until the 90s arcade beat 'em up. They never really had their own title, unless you want to count that weird Connect Battle for Earth thing. So after the reveal, they go 3 long years of silence, and suddenly out of nowhere the game was revealed at an E3 2019 with gameplay and everything, after what many would assume was a rough development cycle. The first impressions online, yeah, they weren't the best. Many roasted the game for looking not that great in facial animations or character design. The story seemed pretty ho-hum, and the gameplay looks like a God of War clone, to put it politely. And not only that, Avengers is competing with its own Marvel property at the time. Insomniac's critically acclaimed multiple Game of the Year selling Spider-Man, which show that superhero games can be, well, really fun and, yes, definitely good, and have their own unique stories never before seen in a comic book. It was something that was its own. Needless to say, Avengers had a lot of shoes to fill, and more press things came out, and Square Enix just loves to disappoint. Pre-orders for exclusive beta access, a slew, and I mean a slew, of PS4 exclusive content, including locking Spider-Man as a playable character behind a PlayStation paywall, the reveal of the game being a live service title as heroes and story will be drip-fed to us through the coming years, 2 delays, and many stupid microtransactions, locked away skins and customizable, the likes of which are locked behind things like a Verizon internet access, and yes, React 5 gum. All this set up for a game that's probably gonna have a pretty rocky launch. So after getting bullied by a couple of my friends and my own curiosity getting the best of me, I decided to buckle down and pay the $73 to get early access to the game and check out the hype behind this Marvel's Avengers stuff. Needless to say, it didn't really live up to my expectations at all, and they were already pretty low. Let's talk about it. Now, I would sit here and tell you guys all how the story starts, but everyone knows how the story starts. They've shown A-Day so many times it's mind-numbing. Like, you think they keep it a little bit of a surprise, maybe jump around and just show some of the other stuff? No, A-Day is the biggest thing. It's in every advertisement. It was in the E3 demo. If you guys don't know how the story starts, I don't know what to tell you. Regardless, I got you with the cliff notes. The little fangirl Camilla Khan loves the Avengers and is qualifying for the fanfiction contest at the Avengers Day event. Yeah, you heard that right. Don't bat an eye. She is in the top 8 and wants to reach VIP access for the Avengers Day event. The game takes the time to let you explore this mini Avengers convention, collecting old comic books and showcases the controls in a pretty fun way, not gonna lie to you. During her collection, she encounters every major Avenger. Bruce Banner, who's talking to some scientists who clearly are not the bad guys at all. Thor, who lands near Camilla Khan and they share some words about her fanfiction. Captain America, who sees Camilla stand up to some bullies and commend her for it. And Iron Man, who she meets at the VIP booth doing his typical flashy Iron Man stuff. Now, before I go any further, let me get this off my chest now. This character right here is the most insufferable gremlin I've had the misfortune of playing as in any video game. It's literally just a non-stop barrage of, I'm a fangirl, I'm quirky, look at me, I'm quirky, fanfic this, fanfic that, boohoo and human, okay? Be quiet. Like, did no one in the writing booth pull up and say, hey, this setup is kind of sus. It's a little weird, it's a little over glorification here. Like, I get they're trying to be meta, but it just doesn't work here. It's like the cast of the real world Avengers and our world going to a Comic-Con and holding an Avengers fanfiction panel where they all vote on everyone's creepy Wattpad lemon fiction. It just doesn't make sense. Not only do they give these creeps recognition, but a prize too. It's just mind-numbing. And having Captain Marvel be this overly obsessed teenager with all these grown adults in the storyline, it's weird. Okay, it's just weird. They keep flip-flopping between very serious and mature, and then they go from jokey, haha fun into teenage melodrama. It just doesn't make any sense. Oh, hello there, Spider-Man and Tony Stark from the MCU. I didn't quite see you there. Nice to meet you. So yes, if you're wondering, the entire story basically revolves around Camilla and her struggles as an Inhuman, with the rest of the, to be blunt, much more interesting stuff to me: the Avengers grieving Cap's death, how they react to that, how AIM got powerful so quickly, where have they even been for the last 5 years when they were all split apart. That's all going to be pushed to the wayside, or hopefully will be DLC or the iconic missions that don't really add much, sadly. And in theory, this is a fine enough setup, right? Sure, I'm a little bit burnt out of the young adult coming of age stories and geek fiction, but hey, it might be a good one. But it isn't. The writing is just her, always being an obsessive fangirl, or struggling with the fact that she's Inhuman, or just acting reckless as kids do, and constantly rewarding her with a tiny slap on the wrist, or a beautiful last minute save, my favorite trope in fiction. All with the classic ho-hum, well, she's just a teenager. She just drags down the story a lot, especially because everything in the game seems to revolve around her. Why do the Avengers get back together? It's Camilla. Who is the one kickstarting the events of the game? Well, she's talking to a mysterious person named Tiny Dancer. I wonder who it could be. No one else on the roster's unlocked. Oh, it couldn't be that it's, you know, the most predictable twist of all time. And who's the talk of the town when you hop into that resistance? It's definitely Camilla. The writing is just really predictable, unoriginal, and honestly not that great. I found myself getting attached to Iron Man of all characters. Not because he's great or anything or well written, he's still typical Tony blame myself Stark, but at least he's kind of funny and has some decent banter with the entire cast. Which brings me to my second point. The game tries to juggle way too many stories into one. You have the 8-day thing where San Francisco goes haywire, the crux of the plot, the Inhumans are made, Cap is dead. Then you have the entire history behind AIM and the scientist's slow descent into madness, along with a sidekick that's a mastermind manipulator, the likes of which both don't really get that fleshed out, or are just kind of one-off cutscenes, and they never really explain why they want Camilla so badly. I don't want to get into spoilers, that's a whole nother issue. The entire Avengers being scattered and added and discarded and re-added into the story before anyone minus Tony and Bruce can get a chance to have an arc that's fulfilling. And of course, a myriad of other issues I just can't get into because of spoilers. It's a really rushed story, quickly trying to reach Kamala Khan's resolution while throwing a player a couple breadcrumbs or two to get you excited in hopes that they're going to further expand on this in the current campaign. This brings us to the biggest problem, if you couldn't already see the flaws. Avengers is a live service game, so it's going to have a lot of story added on, which will be coming in future updates already confirmed with the Hawkeye and his daughter Kate stories expansions, which already will cover my complaints about not fully understanding AIM's, well, motivations. Who they really work for, why they do what they do, and why do they want to wipe out superpowers so badly, which, by the way, may I add, is a really lame villain concept. Like, the whole reason MODOK is here is because boo-hoo people have powers and he doesn't? Okay, buddy. It gets really hypocritical towards the end, but I guess it's set up for a cool enough boss fight. Despite my many qualms with the story, I'll give it this. The voice acting, it's pretty good. Along with the in-game cinematics, they're shot pretty darn well, and couple that with some awesome motion capture, you get something that really does feel like it's straight out of a movie. The graphics certainly help during the cinematics, textures and character models look sick, all while running at a kind of smooth 60 FPS, in cutscenes at least. The animation, lighting, all the usual stuff, it's good. Very much up to stuff with everything out right now, and heck, even the alternate costumes are a nice touch. Yeah, they do play it a little bit too safe for my liking, but hey, it gets the job done. So, what do we have so far? We have a mediocre story that's definitely rushed, but it's okay. Fanboys will defend it and say it'll get better in a year or two, the likes of which we'll discuss the issues with later. Some pretty graphics and awesome physics when you go around destroying stuff, nice lighting and particle effects that make attacks feel very strong, and the list goes on. It's a gorgeous game with a shaky frame rate. And yep, ladies and gentlemen, after all that moaning about the story, it is time for my favorite part of a review. Is the game fun to play? Well, to be frank with you, yeah, no, kind of, in spurts. Buckle up, it's gonna be a little bit. Marvel's Avengers is essentially a looter shooter. You have resources you pick up, gear you equip, and level up, vendors to purchase gear from, a long skill tree which requires grinding a separate character card set for each hero, the likes of which also grinding to get new costumes, calling cards, emotes, and finishers. I'm molding, you get my point. The bulk of the game is dedicated to the grind, so surely the gameplay is up to snuff, right? Marvel's Avengers is a beat-em-up hack and slash with a slew of abilities to unlock throughout gameplay. Everyone has access to a light and heavy attack along with a ranged attack, all of which can be upgraded by earning skill points. These skills give you a larger combo tree, launchers for combo extensions, better ranged options, and things of that nature. So naturally, the campaign is painfully average, and pardon the mini rant here, but we gotta go on a tangent to talk about how the level system and stuff works here before we talk about the core combat. The way the game works is you have a campaign you have to follow and a bunch of side missions called war table missions that you can go do to level up a character. The catch is you can only level up characters individually, and the fastest way to do that is by basically rushing or breezing through the campaign. So you spend a lot of your time playing the campaign with characters that get added in and out and re-added, and they don't have a full skill tree to unlock or even be used for war table missions depending on where you get in the campaign. They're literally not in your hero pool or party. Some people like Cap don't even get added until the very end. So that being said, you go through a large chunk of the game where you're basically under leveled, not with a full skill tree, so you're kind of just doing the same thing for 10 hours straight because you literally do not have the experience needed to make all the characters feel awesome to play, which they do get awesome to play, but the only way to make them feel awesome is by doing the war table missions, the likes of which you can't even really do because some of them are locked behind a high gear score, and the fastest way to level up the characters to reach that said high gear score is by breezing through the campaign. So the game literally incentivizes you to rush through the campaign, even though the campaign tells you to stop rushing and go play war table missions at a certain section, which isn't even worth it because you can't reach a certain gear score unless you complete the campaign. It is the most asinine gameplay decision I've ever seen. Who thought a gear system or a loot system or a level up skill tree this massive was okay? And speaking of which, it doesn't even matter because I've played other games before with pretty massive skill trees, you know, your Ninja Gaiden, your Devil May Cry's, those types of hack and slashes, and I could see a vast and varied combo tree in those games, right? You're fighting mobs of enemies with the utmost tight execution, high octane combat, beautiful music, all that good stuff. But the issue with Marvel's Avengers is what you see is what you get. The characters provided all have the same launchers and attacks, so combos get really stale after 1 to 2 hours of play. My Camilla ain't playing different than your Camilla, and your Iron Man probably doesn't play too different from my Iron Man, if you catch my gist. You really have to prioritize leveling up these characters too, by the way, because if you don't, as stated earlier, in the odd case you find a match, you're basically going to be stuck playing a character who has no combo potential at all, making you a weak league. The core combat in the first couple bursts is relatively fun, as stated early. The frame rate works, like when it's running well, it's decent. It's nice to see Hulk smashing stuff and particle effects and all that cool stuff flying in 60 FPS. It feels good to hit things. To start getting into character specifics, the modifiers are a nice touch to break up combat as well. Having Hulk enter rage mode by holding R2 and breaking and destroying everything in sight while just sprinting is awesome. His ripping chunks of the floor beneath you, picking up grunts and throwing it all around like action figures, it always puts a grin on my face. Sadly, despite all of that, leveling up his skill tree just made Hulk a bit too powerful, This obviously isn't a knock at the game or anything, it's just the honest truth. He's just a great character to play, and I had to switch off of him just to make the game a little bit more hard for me. Captain Marvel, go figure, was my least favorite. Her core combos are okay, but what did me in was her weird attributes the polymorph had. I could never really get it to work for me, especially in clutches of enemies. She just would not dodge, and I felt like her damage increase in attacks, or her kit in all honesty, wasn't really up to my taste, and she was just a bit too laggy for me. Which surprised me after playing the Hulk, who is essentially an agile tank on legs with big leaps and bounds. Captain Marvel just didn't have the sauce, for lack of a better word, and her linking animations more often than not caused me to get hit rather than dish out damage. Iron Man is by far the best character in the game. He's possibly the most fun to play. His repulsors are great for juggles and quick headshots, lasers were also for crowd control, and yes, even juggles, and his missiles are great for taking down those big hulking enemies. Couple that with a lot of flying sections with the Iron Man himself, and yeah, you have basically the most fun character to play and the most well-rounded, a true jack of all trades. He just has so many tools for taking out the baddies, and he never really gets too boring to play because he has all these, I guess, alternate weapons at his disposal. Easily had the most playtime with him. Thor was also up there with Tony in terms of combat. His specials and core moveset are great for crowd control. His lightning armor makes him the best in crowded fights, letting him tank hits with no damage like it's no one's business. Plus, he has the added bonus of doing the hammer throw, which is always dope to see it, reeling back and knocking over baddies like bowling pins. It's great fun, and if you're looking for a mixture of air juggles like Iron Man and Kamala Khan while still keeping the Hulk's tankier build, you found the right guy. Lastly, we have two characters who are kinda two peas in the same pod. We have Black Widow and her fast acrobatic kicks and electrical attacks. Her entire skill set revolves around being a very nimble and aggressive fighter for quick pokes but low damage. She's essentially a support role made to shoot baddies from afar and go for those last hit kills on an enemy. She also has some really fun skill tree stuff to work with, a charged up double pistol shot along with full auto SMG, triple burst shots for pistols, and her skills aid the team with invisibility and give everyone a chance to grab those last second health pickups. She fits the role perfectly of a quick roguelike fighter with fast combo strings but lacking in the damage department. And lastly, we have good old Captain America, the Star-Spangled Banner himself. And what can I say, they did an awesome job adapting Captain America into the game. He's got a throwable shield with tons of recoil, letting you bounce it off of enemies as it flies back into your hand. You have parries and blocking moves thanks to the shield, allowing for sick openings on big enemies, which is always satisfying to pull off. And of course, the War Cry skill, buffing everyone's attack. The best part about the Avengers is, in all honesty, the sweet movement options available, from grappling to flying to wall running and double jumps galore. Each character has their own movement made for getting around. Sadly, it does feel rather poorly utilized in certain sections. Aside from the main story linear segments, many areas do feel exclusively tailored for you to run with a certain character or a group of characters. You'll really see this during the more open world hub sections, when you see a chest in the distance and you want to unlock it, but it's behind a breakable heavy attack door and you need Captain Marvel or the Hulk to break it. And even if those characters are on the team, that doesn't guarantee you'll actually get the help, especially with those poor AI teammates. And well, I guess it's finally time to talk about that. These teammates are hit or miss. They tend to get stuck far behind your current position and are often seen teleporting and doing all they can to keep up with you, the main person, in a group. They do revive you, which is always a nice benefit. They don't tend to get stuck behind walls too much, or sometimes just straight up teleport, but they do not really help you out, alright? They don't really do as much as you would like them to do. You're kind of doing all the work when you play solo, which I guess is both nice and kind of annoying, especially again when it comes to finding secrets, because you literally either have to play the character or bring a friend in, or hopefully a random online person will help you to break certain things to get your loot, you know what I'm saying? And that's always an issue. Which brings us to our final point of gameplay, the enemy variety. A beat 'em up is only as fun as the enemies you encounter, as you all know, and shockingly, it's a strong mixture of enemy types. We've got guys in jetpacks, your lance tank builds, your enemies that can teleport all around, your easy to one-shot drones and grunts, and a handful of really unique fighters like exomechs and giant war drone spider creatures. Each enemy forces you to mix up your gameplay quite drastic, so you can't just get away with mashing square. You have to vault over enemy shields, shoot down airborne aimed soldiers, and even start juggles with larger foes to deplete a health pool as fast as possible. And the game doesn't stop there. Some have their own elemental abilities, causing the player to really go out of their way to either equip gear to resist the damage given or get out of dodge from a possible freezing. During huge fights, I really did see myself struggling in single player without competent help from taking on the objectives. The AI leaves you a bit vulnerable, and well, that does lead you to a slew of deaths, especially when you have to defend 3 points at once. The gear you acquire throughout the game is minimal in effect, in all honesty. I could never really feel the difference in power between what I was equipping. I even went large chunks of the game not wearing armor with stats, only to realize that the game was yelling at me to equip higher gear because I found myself under leveled. And upon equipping it, it didn't really feel like it did much. I was still defeating enemies at the same speed, still losing health at relatively the same speed. It didn't really feel like much was changing. The whole gear system just feels a bit corporate, along with the whole faction and stuff the game tries to shoehorn in there. It's all a setup just so you can grind your character to max levels, so I guess I understand why there's those daily missions, but it just still feels out of place for a game of this magnitude. Which brings us to the frame rate. The game runs in 2 different modes, 60 FPS unlocked and 30 FPS, and let it be known, for any action game, the only way to play is 60 FPS, and sadly its frame rate just drops way too often to make it in any semblance of a fun experience. During explosions or any combat in a crowded area, or anything with too high-res textures, which you will see them drop with dynamic resolution, or maybe there's too many physics on screen, doesn't really matter the case, the game will go from 60 to 30 FPS real quick, which makes the game really hard to play since it's constantly bouncing between frame rates during fight segments, causing inputs to feel sloppy or laggy. Sure, you could just play the 30 FPS mode, but even that didn't feel like it was optimized. Maybe it's just me, but it looked really choppy. It didn't feel great to play at all, and anytime I turned it on, I'd rather just take the variable frame rate and the lag that it brings rather than deal with an unoptimized 30 FPS mode that looked like it had a couple of frame pacing issues. The modes were relatively subpar, and they led to a subpar gaming experience, and this is something I really wanted fixed from beta, but let's be honest, at the end of the day, this just isn't a PS4 game. Textures pop in, there's glitches galore, assets take forever to load, leaving you invisible at times. It's obvious this is a next-gen title pushing the PS4 to its limits. The performance is abysmal on the Pro, and yeah, that made me start realizing how repetitive the game can get without those single player campaign missions, without those Iron Man flying set pieces or the QTEs or the giant stages they let you play around in, the boss battles and all the cool stuff. It just made those war table missions make the game look really bland, really fast. As for the bulk of the game, it's honestly just mashing square and triangle and using your abilities haphazardly, running around a tiny square arena, setting up checkpoints or holding an area, whatever you need to do, breaking people out, you get the gist. If the game didn't take these lazy half-baked hub worlds but instead made more focused linear dungeon crawling levels or raids to play through, rather than stick you in a square room with objectives and tell you to hold or destroy stuff, it would be a lot more fun. But unfortunately, that's just not what we get. We get these giant hub worlds that later lead into tiny square arena, and you hold objectives and mash square and triangle and do it all, but it's okay, you can bring 3 friends to suffer through the pain with you. So, do I recommend you guys pick up Marvel's Avengers? Honestly, not really. Even with friends, there is some decent stuff to be played here. It is kind of fun in spurts, but the lackluster campaign, poor writing, and awful repetitive mission design just makes this a mediocre experience with or without friends. There are plenty of games similar to Marvel's Avengers style that are either free or on the cheap with much more interesting stories and content as of now. If you want some recommendations off the top of my head, Destiny 2 is absolutely awesome at the moment, and the expansion is going to be free with Game Pass, which will be coming to PC and Xbox, so that's more than incentive enough to pick it up. Also, the season pass is just infinitely cheaper. You also have Remnant from the Ashes, which is a game similar to this with melee combat, but also really fun shooting and has that kind of Dark Souls vibe to it in terms of monster design and things of that nature. And heck it, you even got games like Division 1, Division 2, and Warframe out there. There's a lot of games out there that are like this that just do everything much, much better. However, that being said, despite the PS4 issues and the fact that there are just better games on the market, I do have hope that this game will eventually be better than decent. Probably when the PS5 comes around. It's gonna look a lot better when we're playing it in 4K 60 FPS on our monitors and all that cool stuff. And it'll probably set up for a lot less of a mediocre experience. But as of now, that's all we have to work with. Well, that does it. Save your money for next gen and maybe pick up this game alongside it. It's going to be a next gen powerhouse. I really do believe that. But until then, avoid these last gen versions. They're just not worth it, free upgrade or not. However, that's going to do it for our Avengers review. Thank you all so much for watching the video, and I am very happy that you guys stuck with me through this lengthy discussion on what the Marvel's Avengers game is basically about. I will continue doing content and stuff for this game, as I do want to see where it's going to go, where it's going to grow hopefully in the future. And of course, we'll do an entirely another review during the PS5 version of the game when that eventually comes out sometime in November, I think, or whenever these consoles are dropping. Regardless, thank you all so much again for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below, and don't forget to check out some of my other content if you enjoyed what you watched here. It is all pretty similar, and I really enjoyed making this video. It was a great time, guys. Alright, YungFalcon signing out. Y'all be safe out there. Save up your bread and get a PS5 day one. I'm gonna need you guys to get that, alright? Don't waste 60 or 70 already out the gate. Alright, don't let yourself get set back here with Avengers. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Peace.